Welcome to the Anxious Child Podcast, the podcast that helps you best work with anxious kids and teens. Now, here's your host, Stephen Quinlan.
Welcome, everyone. I hope that all is going well with you in your world. Today on the show, I'm very excited to announce that we have Jennifer Brosnick. Jennifer is a licensed clinical social worker, anxiety treatment specialist, and HeartMath certified trainer. She helps women and teen girls who struggle with anxiety, self-doubt, and perfectionism tap into their innate resilience and get to the root of their fears. She implements custom healing strategies so that they can experience peace of mind, more self-confidence, and be liberated from the sufferings that living with anxiety causes. So obviously, Jennifer is a great guest for this show. I'm really excited that she agreed to come on. She has a wealth of knowledge around some of the latest techniques in mineral management, which I wasn't aware of. It was very interesting to hear about. In any case, I think you will find her approachability, vulnerability, and knowledge that she has not only from her training, but also her own personal experience with anxiety and depression and being the parent of 3 children. So before we dive into the show, I think we can all agree that we don't need anything that adds any extra anxiety in our already hectic lifestyles. You know, something that causes anxiety is clutter, especially cord clutter. Mount Genie at mountgenie.com makes clever tech accessories and mounting solutions for your Alexa, Google Home, video game consoles, and all brands of Wi-Fi mesh router networks. They rein in that messy cord clutter in your home or in your office. Mount Genie also has organizational solutions for your keys, remotes, sunglasses, and more. Most install without tools in minutes and won't cause damage to walls. Mount Genie is a family-owned company solving your cord clutter problems. Check them out today at mountgenie.com. Now that we've taken care of our advertising, let's sit back and enjoy me and Jennifer Brosnick. Well, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate you being here.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'd love to hear about how you work with anxiety and especially related to female issues and certainly teen female issues in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought maybe we could just start a little bit with your background, how you got into doing this work. I know you have, is it 3 kids? Am I right on that?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
3 kids that have anxiety at various times. So my training comes in handy at home too.
I'm sure that it does.
So I am a licensed clinical social worker. So I got my degree from NYU, and the entire time I was in grad school, I knew I wanted to work with children and families. So I put myself into a school for my internship, and then I worked with children who had experienced some sort of trauma, either abuse, had a traumatic experience, and doing play therapy with them.
Okay. Did you live in the city during that time?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of course.
That's funny. I went to Hunter College actually too, so that's where
that was my other choice. It was between Hunter and NYU,
nice.
And I just fell in love with Washington Square Park.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you.
I was like, I'll pay it, whatever.
Yeah, that's fine. Here, take my card.
Exactly.
Nice.
But it worked out well, and I had great supervisors and a great learning experience, and found that I was just called to work specifically with anxiety because of my own personal experience with anxiety. I'd
Okay.
always been an anxious kid. So I think I gravitated towards those opportunities where the kids were coming in and having anxieties about, oftentimes it was leaving mom, that moment of goodbye at school, that was one of the things. Or maybe it was anxiety about going from one house to another in a divorced family. So there were many different ways that these fears were coming up. And really, unfortunately, I didn't have the training that I do today. So I probably didn't do like such great work actually back in the day until I got really more into the training with Lynn Lyons, who's
Oh, sure. I know Lynn. Yeah.
amazing teacher. Yeah, fantastic. How she teaches is so powerful and really informs a lot of the work that I do with my clients today, especially with children and families, because like you can't treat anxiety in a child without treating the whole family unit.
Right.
You're constantly back and forth with how do you provide support and encouragement and love, and not over support and over love where the child then feels that they can't do those scary things. And that was sort of my experience as a child, going back to my own anxiety, is I had the most loving, amazing parents who wanted to make sure I was comfortable and safe all the time.
Yep.
And that breeds anxious children.
Mm-hmm.
I always say, like, the most loving parents have the most anxious children, because, there isn't that freedom. Like, we don't give that free reign for the kids to say, go ride their bikes without being tracked, or to do, certain things that are outside of their comfort zone without parental hovering.
Yeah, it's such a hard line to walk between that helicoptering versus free range. Like,
Yeah.
where do you fall on that spectrum?
Yeah. And there's no right answer. Like, so, parents who are listening, there is no right answer.
Right. Yeah.
I always look at it as, and I have 3 kids. So, and they're all different. My oldest, she does get anxious at times, but she pushes through. Like, she just is like, I got this. Like, she does competition dance. And so she shows up on stage and she does her thing. My middle daughter will have a panic attack right before going on stage. And, for her, what I realized is it really came down to her diet, because if she was dancing, she was burning up all of that fuel, and then her blood sugar fell, which feels terrible. So then it creates that cycle of worry where the amygdala is like, something's going on, it's dangerous, let me shoot off some, the messages to our adrenals, and we get all those like terrible chemicals in our body. And so I am constantly reminding her, like, this is your worry part. Nothing is wrong. You're safe. We're going to eat some, usually some carbs or sugar to like get the blood sugar back up. And then we're going to go back on stage, because in my own life, like, it is hard, but I really try to push my kids to do the scary things, even when they feel terrible, because that is the only way to really treat anxiety, is to say, yeah, I do feel bad, and I'm going to take these steps, because I know that if I don't, fear is just going to run the ship. And so it's that, when do you push, when do you coddle sort of question is constantly.
I get that question a lot.
Yeah.
And
It's hard.
It is,
It's hard.
absolutely. And as you're saying, I think, and part of what makes, I think, being a parent in general, so much of the work is being able to manage your own stuff to make sure that that doesn't get kind of mixed up in, with the kids. And at the same time, knowing your kid well enough to know, okay, like, this might work for my middle one, but this is not going to work for my younger one or my older one, or what have you. And then, being able to apply that. So yeah, it's a challenge. And when you have 3, it's 3 times the challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Or, but if you look at it as a growth opportunity,
There you go.
Watching them go through their fears, it really forces me to look at what I'm doing. Am I confronting my fears? Am I going on offense and saying, okay, I really don't love. Like right now, like the thought of like speaking in a live group is like, like my worry part's like, maybe not right now. But at some point, we're going to be back out in the world, and that's going to be an opportunity. And so I have to do it because I have to be the model for my kids. And so, just like you said, understanding yourself. But I think also there's such power in being vulnerable with our kids around our own fears. Like, yeah, I'm really scared. This is happening this week. I'm really nervous about this interview I have, or doing the speaking engagement, or starting something new. And I'm noticing these feelings, and I'm still going to go do it. So it's sort of just as a family unit, normalizing that we don't feel good all of the time. There are moments where we're sad or cranky or scared or happy. We get that full range, rather than I see a lot of kids who struggle when it's constantly on the happiness. Like, what can we do to keep them happy? Everybody has to be happy all the time. Or then, there's too much stress in the home. And so to me, it's more about how do you build that resilience with them so that they can cope with whatever the feeling is. Because like, it's a feeling. Like, yes, it feels terrible, 100%. And it's a feeling. It will not kill you. It will pass,
Right.
shortly.
Yeah, it's so there's something kind of counterintuitive about going into those sometimes negative feelings rather than avoiding. I think the natural impulse, of course, certainly for ourselves and perhaps even more so with your children, is to try and avoid that. But as you've, I think, pretty nicely outlined, that just sort of creates this it's almost a loop of worry or an avoidance and that kind of thing. Can you tell me a little bit? You mentioned a couple of times sort of your own experience and how you've had to manage that. And can you tell me a little bit about what that was like for you?
Yeah, so my anxiety journey, it's evolved over the years. So at different phases, at different times. So when I was younger, I had seizures.
Oh.
And so I think from that, I had very overprotective parents because of you have a kid that has seizures, you're concerned about them, you're watching over them a little bit more. Then as I got older, I was more of a introvert extrovert child. I was in social environments. I was very anxious unless I knew the group of people, and then I could be an extrovert and talk and it was fine. But I think that social anxiety and that fear of judgment was a different flavor of anxiety than what was happening when I was a kid. And as things change in your life, you go to college, that's new and different. I think anytime there is a shift where you are uncertain and uncomfortable, anxiety is going to show up. But then as I got even older, what happened was there were physical reasons for my anxiety that I had to figure out and address. And so in my practice, I really try to take a holistic approach, because if I'm working with a teenager or a grown woman, I'm assuming that she's been exposed to toxins, to different hormones, potentially birth control, maybe has excess copper, maybe has blood sugar issues. So, kids, we don't usually see that. I'm not looking at that so much with the kid. I'm working more with the family and the cognitive patterns and the process of anxiety. And as people get older, I'm doing those things too, but I'm also looking at their diet, their lifestyle, their stress responses, because all of that is going to play into the experience of anxiety, and it's unique for everyone. And so once I'm working with an older client, and came from my own experience of figuring out, I knew since I'd like anxiety was like my BFF, like we've been together for years, like I knew the flavor of my anxiety. And so as I got older and it was more of this like physical anxiety. So I knew it was different than that cognitive rumination anxiety. It was more of, the best I could describe it is like, it felt like I was on a roller coaster. Like I could feel like my nervous system was activated like constantly, and just all these heart palpitations, physical symptoms. And so then I went down the path of digging into what was happening in my body, and found I had a parasite and copper, and
Wow.
I had a slow metabolic state. I needed extra sodium, which took care of the heart palpitations. And so I don't do this for all of my clients, but I will do a hair mineral analysis to see what's going on, because it's so simple. You can look to see, like, what are the minerals? How's the magnesium? How's the potassium? Those are the ones that like make us feel good.
Mm-hmm.
How's the sodium? How's the calcium? And they all play different roles, and we feel better when they are balanced.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes for a client just to see, oh my gosh, I have all these imbalances, it gives them that why. Because I think the biggest thing with anxiety, it's why.
Yeah.
Why is this happening? The minute so when you're driving your car and someone pulls out in front of you and you stop, you feel all the same feelings of anxiety. Your heart is racing, you're tingling, you're like super focused, because you know what happened. You don't freak out and have a panic attack, because the car jumped out, my body responded.
There's a
You
reason.
take a few deep breaths, like the car goes away, you keep on driving, and you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
When anxiety comes up and it's like, there's no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I feeling like this? What is going on? To give someone a piece of paper that says, look, this is part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Then they can work with the anxiety a little bit more. So what Lynn has taught is this idea of pulling out that worry part.
Mm-hmm.
So acknowledging that anxiety is always going to be there. It is also not all of you. You are not an anxious person. You have this part of yourself that reacts to changes and uncertainty in the environment, whether that's the physical environment, mental, emotional, spiritual. And so being able to pull that out and talk back to it to say, okay, I know what this is. Let me use some of my tools, which hopefully if you're in therapy, learn some coping tools.
Mm-hmm.
And finding the ones that work for you, because we're all unique. That's the other thing. That's really important.
Yeah, I love that idea of the externalizing. And I think, with the younger kids, it's something that lends itself really well to giving it a funny name, or, drawing it on the paper, or what have you. Once people get older, I think you can even sort of give them what it is that you're doing, right? So we're just externalizing this part of you, and that makes sense to them.
Yeah,
Can you?
I make them draw too, because I
Yeah,
think
okay. I just had an art therapist on the other day, so it was like there's lots of that happening.
I think just giving it a name,
Yeah.
when you can personify it, it becomes silly. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
Right.
even when you're 40, your worry part can have a name.
Yeah.
So don't
And
worry.
it's less threatening. I mean, I think you take that power away from it. There's a lot of power in many ways in naming things, period.
Yeah.
But I think especially with something that takes control of you, and also when there's that sense, as you were just describing, of where is this coming from? Is this just me? Like, is there something quote unquote wrong with me?
Right.
That feels much different. Can you say a little bit more about the hair tissue mineral analysis? Like, what does that involve? And I'm not familiar with that. I'm curious.
You cut a tiny piece of your hair from like very close to the scalp, because that gives you about a month of how your body is processing the different minerals, maybe toxins that you could be exposed to. So it's testing for mercury. I think about like 10 other environmental toxins that we get exposed to constantly because of our food, our water supply. There's our teeth, having mercury fillings can create big problems for people. And so once you get the test back, you can see, it gives you there's different metabolic states that people are in. So people are fast metabolizers, slow metabolizers. Once you know that information, you know the different kinds of foods that you need to have. So, maybe you need more protein and fat. Maybe you need more vegetable type carbs and protein. So it's that individualized for the moment. So it's a snapshot. So it's always moving and changing. And So I'll do it like 3 or 4 times a year just to see. And I've switched from fast metabolizer to slow metabolizer. So it's a moving target. It's not this, oh, this is you forever, which is the same thing with lab work, right? When you go in
Right.
to get labs, what they're measuring though is just in the serum. So if you took a vitamin D that day, it's possible that your vitamin D is going to be fine because you just took it. So it's in the serum. Is it in the cell? Is your body utilizing it? Is it pushing it out? Which is where it goes to the hair, because the hair is soft tissue.
Mhm.
So that's how, things are measured, like they're pushed out into our soft tissue. So, which is not good for, like, let's say calcium. If we have tons of calcium in our soft tissue, guess what? It's not in our teeth and our bones, which is where it needs to be for the strength. So you're just looking at these different factors. And I will tell you, I've done them many times, and people don't make many changes, but the ones they do tend to have a pretty big impact.
Mm.
So I tend to feel that it's more of that peace of mind, like, oh, I know what this is, that actually gives some healing, as well as any of the supplements or dietary changes that they make along the way.
I see. Okay. So does that necessitate them sort of, you mentioned it says the moving target. Would somebody, if they
Mhm.
were interested in doing that, would they do that like 3 times a year or something like that? Or what would that look
It's
like?
a pretty
It's up to you.
inexpensive test. I think it's like
Yeah.
$67. So
Okay.
what I always say is get a baseline,
Mm.
make some changes, see how you feel. If you're feeling good, if you're feeling better, maybe wait a year.
Mm.
Wait to see, kind of like at a physical type of thing. See, are you still in the same place? But if you're not feeling good after 3 months, maybe you do another one and see, is there something that changed? Maybe I need to up a certain thing, especially magnesium. Everyone's deficient in magnesium.
Yeah. That's kind of all the rage these days. I hear about that
Yeah,
all the time. Yeah.
absolutely. And it's so, you can really take it, up to your bowel tolerance. So,
Okay. Whatever that
for
may
most
be.
people, right. It's,
Uh, uh,
guessing game.
okay. 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 That's interesting. So, thinking about back, this idea of the kind of the physical sort of anxiety that you were describing
Hmm.
in yourself and how it has kind of a different, I guess, flavor to it. I thought you were actually going to say that this was something that was brought on postpartum for you, which I enjoyed your mindful mommy book. I thought that had a lot of
Thank
great
you.
suggestions in it. Yeah.
Awesome.
And just what I've seen in kind of some other new mothers, you always hear
Hmm.
about the depression, but not necessarily that anxiety side of things.
Yeah.
And it has that organic like quality to it.
Yeah. So, yes, there was a lot of factors around that time. So that book I wrote after my third, where I really had more postpartum depression, anxiety. With my first, I had what I would say was more of those like intrusive, scary thoughts. Like,
Uh,
what if I drop her down the stairs? What if I have a seizure when I'm holding her right now?
mm,
Sort of those like big fears that would come up, but it wasn't stopping me in my tracks. It was after I had my third one. So the first round was more of the depression, where when I wrote the book, it was like I woke up one day and then I reflected. I'm like, wow, I really felt terrible the last 3 months. It was almost, I wasn't even aware of how bad I felt until I had a little bit of space to feel better. And then it was this huge aha of, okay, well, what did I do to get here? And that's what the book came from, was what were the things that I began to do that allowed me to get back to this place. And at 6 weeks postpartum, when you go in for your doctor's visit, they ask you, well, what are you going to do for birth control? Because I knew I was done.
mhm.
And so I decided to get the copper IUD, which
Okay.
was the worst decision of my life.
Mm,
And it had so many, that's where the physical anxiety came from. But I had it taken out after about a month, once I like put two and two together. Cause I was thinking like, yeah, maybe this is postpartum anxiety, but it what like it literally felt as if when I lied in bed, that I was on a roller coaster, like an up and down roller coaster. So I'd have these crazy heart palpitations. And of course, all the doctors said, no, it's not that, you're fine. But you go on any forum online that's like, cover IUD symptoms, like lists
Is
of
that how you figured it?
women.
Is that how you
Yeah,
figured it out? Really?
absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. And so I just went, my doctor was not happy because they just placed it like a month ago and they don't, I guess, like unplacing IUDs maybe. And it got better, but I still had the copper. So then I created this copper issue in my body that then I had to deal with, which took about a year, I would say, of supplementation and, getting my diet back in better shape. And detox it, like all of those things. It takes time to heal. And I think that's an important thing to mention because most people think, well, I just want to feel better right now, which is why there is this, trend of, well, just find a medication because then it'll work and you'll feel better right now. That's not always the case. So, medications aren't a miracle for many, many people. And so I think it's just allowing yourself the permission to heal at your own pace. Keep doing those little things every day, just like I was doing little things every day. I wasn't going to a nutrition center. I still had 3 kids I had to parent and do all that other stuff I was doing, and started adding in these other behaviors that supported my physical, emotional, spiritual well-being during that time. It wasn't an overnight success. It wasn't an overnight fix.
Yeah.
So, and people just, I think, relaxing into that can help to release some of the tension around the healing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think particularly in our society and culture, everything's the quick fix, right? And people are naturally looking for that. So when you're working with, say, anxious teen, I have questions around sort of what challenges do you see in working, I guess, just sort of with women in general, but maybe even more particularly with teen women?
Yeah, it's definitely different with adolescents, right? I'm going to speak to right now, today's age, COVID times.
Okay.
So there's a lot of loneliness that I'm seeing. There's a lot of social anxiety where kids have forgotten how to communicate with other people. So speaking and having those awkward conversations is very hard. There's definitely depression among them, and certainly being out of any sort of rhythm, there are many sleep disturbances, which creates more anxiety, more depression. And so that is also happening with women, the sleep disturbances. But I would say for my mom clients, it's more of they're exhausted, like they're burned out from the 80 million things that are on their to-do list, plus parenting, plus work, trying to keep everybody happy and feed them and clean the house. And it's more of an overwhelm situation along with the anxiety.
Okay.
But in both cases, I'm doing a lot of teaching. So I do a lot of psychoeducation around how diet and lifestyle, even if it's just put on a blue light blocking app on your phone so that you never see blue light again, or turn off your phone by 8 p.m. and get up at the same time every single day. Because what happens is their circadian rhythms get all turned around. And so they're staying up till 3 a.m., but then they're sleeping until 10, which when the circadian rhythm gets messed up, it impacts all of our hormones. So it's not just our sleep. We have to look at it. We are a system. It's not just one thing. We have to look at all the things. So that is a good place to start, though, with the sleep, I think, for both groups. It's definitely a top concern that
Okay.
exacerbates any of the symptoms they might be having.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so pervasive. I think anybody that has not slept
Mhm.
well can know what that's like sort of the next
Yeah.
day, how much that
Yeah.
affects you.
Yeah. It's a
So,
tricky one too, because you don't want to stress them out about not sleeping.
right. If it's,
So it's like, oh, it's
that's what
okay.
happens when you have
Whatever
insomnia,
happens.
right?
Right.
You
It's
lay
like,
there being
whatever.
like, I really should be asleep, but I'm not asleep. Oh no,
Right.
why am I not asleep?
Right. Exactly. But you can't worry about it.
Yeah,
It's all good that you're not asleep. We'll deal with it the next day. So
right.
instead of taking that pressure off in the moment and bringing in just some simple sleep behaviors that can help.
So much of what you talk about in your book, too, the one that I mentioned, the Mindful
Mm-hmm.
Mommy book, was
Yeah.
very much focused on taking care of yourself before taking care of the rest of your family, which again has that almost kind of counterintuitive feel to it of let me put on my own oxygen mask before I go about and help her. Like they
Mm-hmm.
have to tell you that on the plane, right? Because
Yeah.
otherwise most people would be like, well, I got to help this person next to me. It sounds like that's a lot of what you preaching that to a lot of your clients as well?
Yeah. So one of the other tools that I use a lot is called heart math.
Yeah, tell me about
So
that. I saw
heart
that.
math. So heart math uses a measurement of heart rate variability to assess someone's resilience, basically. So the more resilient we are, the better our heart rate variability. And so by learning these tools, you can increase your capacity to cope with stress. So this is one of the things that has to happen, but we have to eat right, take care of ourselves, because if we don't, we lose that capacity and it drains our battery. And if we're on an empty battery every day and we're trying to parent, we're just not going to be as effective as we want to. And so to every day just notice, what are the things that drain me? And can I stop doing some of these things, or can I maybe use some coping tools in order to manage those a little bit better? And what are the things that renew me every day, that feel amazing, that make me feel happy, joyful, grateful? I mean, gratitude as a practice is such a powerful healing tool. So the more grateful we feel about what we have, the less we're inclined to feel depressed about what we don't.
Mhm.
And so it's really for every group, teens, moms, anybody, that is living in a stressful time, finding ways to fill your own cup is actually going to benefit everybody else even more. Because imagine when you're feeling good, how much more can you do? When you're feeling good, you don't lose your temper as much so that you maintain those relationships better. Maybe you're more creative, so you come up with different games to do with your kids, or a different, way to do something at work. So we really all benefit as a society when we decide to say, let's take care of moms. Let's make sure that they are rested and they have good, healthy foods and they are doing things that they love and that they aren't constantly parenting. Because for most women, I would say, parenting can be wonderful. It can also be incredibly hard and challenging. And, I would say thankless in a lot of different ways.
Mm,
And so that is draining when we are doing a job that no one values. Imagine the toll on your self-esteem.
yeah.
And especially as new moms, because it seems like, oh, you're sitting around all day. Like you're just, what are you doing? But, nursing, caretaking, meeting someone's needs is very, very draining of our
Mm.
batteries.
Are you familiar with this concept of I hope I don't butcher this, but I think it's called maternal load.
Yeah,
It's kind of sounds like a lot of what you're talking
absolutely.
about. Uh-huh.
Yeah, like it's the mental load. It's all the things. Did they eat? What time did they eat? Did they take a nap? How many hours do I have until the nap wake time? What time do I have to go pick up the other kids? Oh, this one has a birthday party I have to get them to. Then I have to carpool.
Mm,
So, but this is all happening inside my head,
mhm.
or every mom's head. It's not
Right.
like it's written on a massive board. Oh, these are all the things that I'm thinking about today. So we can all think about it together.
Yeah.
It's no, I'm going to carry the weight of all of that because I know, partners have their own mental load, but I would say the primary parent carries the bulk of it.
I think, and I hope that this is true in some regard. I feel like there's some balancing out of that happening now with the partner loads being, at least in terms of caregiving, sort of balancing out a little bit.
I agree.
Okay.
Like with younger families, for sure. I think the millennials, the younger parents, I see with my brother and sister-in-law that have 2 young kids, that they're both working really. One's a doctor, one's a lawyer. So they're both working.
Right.
So they both have to show up in those capacities.
Yeah.
So, but when let's say one parent decides to stay home because it's just easier, maybe childcare is too expensive, there's still the society value. It's just not valued, because you're not making money. You're not, making this like massive impact in the world, yet it's still work. It still is draining your battery. And so I don't know, there was at one point I saw that they were going to start like paying mothers for like the first year or something, which is like amazing. They should absolutely do that.
Yeah. I wonder what the going rate is.
I know.
That
like
would tell you a lot, wouldn't it? Yeah, right. Yeah. But hopefully there is some change around that a little bit. I think potentially be even really good for a lot of relationships, and that there's, you're not managing that, as you alluded to earlier, like, well, what were you doing all day? Well, I was at the office. No, it's a shared kind of like, oh, did you finish that laundry? I'll do this or whatever.
So it's, relationships, especially when you bring kids into them, is absolutely challenging for sure to figure out, everybody's roles. Can I just add one thing, because I forgot to mention it before? So, I think the biggest piece is that self-compassion, that just having compassion for wherever you are right now, and just letting yourself say, okay, this is a hard time, and I accept myself, and I know I'm doing my best, and really working on that self-love piece is essential to working with anxiety in any population, because there is a lot of that. Well, I shouldn't feel this way. I should be different. I should be doing this. I should be going out. We should all over ourselves, and just being able to sit back and say, okay, I receive this. This is what's happening right now. And just bringing that self-love, self-compassion, because it seems, at least in my experience, that a lot of the pain was because of that lack in that area. Where if I just, was able to open up to, it's okay, this is okay right now, it tended to release some of the, extra stress that I was adding on to myself.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, as we've been talking about, so much of this stuff are things that have been fed to us, that have come from somewhere sort of external, that we've bought into maybe on some level, that you need to, we were talking earlier about just dismissing all of the negative feelings, and everything is happy all the time, and happy, happy, yay. And if you're not, why not? What's wrong with you?
Yes.
Even as we were saying, what you're doing with your time, like, and where is the value in that? It's not something that's externally driven, although sometimes it feels that way. So there's so much freedom in being able to accept where it is that you are, and at whatever particular point in time. And you mentioned the gratitude, and just being not only sort of okay with that, but grateful that that's where you are.
Yeah. And knowing that everything is temporary too. So
the feelings,
sometimes so they did a study with a group of high school students, and I have no idea. I can't remember who it was. Okay. So a group of scientists somewhere.
They et al. Yeah. 2012, I think that was. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Right.
So they had 2 groups of freshmen, and they told one group that things were going to change. They weren't going to be the same way forever. And then they checked in with them, I think in their senior year. And they found that the group that had gotten that knowledge, where they knew that things were always changing, that this experience was temporary, that, oh, like you don't like this teacher right now, guess what? You're going to have another one in a semester. They embodied that belief that we're always growing and changing, rather than thinking, which is, the whole idea of like slapping a label, which like I understand it's necessary for the DSM, but I don't love it, personally, because it gives that self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, this is permanent. This is who you are. This is not changing, which is a lie. It's not
You have
true.
a disease.
We are constantly changing. Our body is constantly changing. I think every 7 years we're a different person. Our microbiome is constantly changing depending on where we are. Are we in nature? Are we in a sterile environment? The bugs in our gut can make us feel happy or sad. So this idea of that nothing is forever, good and bad, and allowing for both of those things.
Yeah. And it's the truth. If you look around, everything is in flux. So it doesn't make sense to sort of try to cling to something that is just not there, which has a lot of that kind of graspy, sort of almost anxious quality to it, even, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you see, I'm thinking about a couple of my own kind of teen female clients, and anxiety is, and also, as we've been talking about, the influence of media, culture, etc. Body image has got to be a big thing with them, right?
Absolutely.
There's a but coming, I think.
And yet,
Okay.
I also see a lot of body positivity.
Oh, good.
So there are certain people that definitely have like a more self-consciousness, but there are so many people on the different platforms now that talk about body to positivity and self-love and body love, that I feel like it's almost better than it was when I was a teen, just in the social comparison. I didn't have TikTok when I was a teenager. I don't have it now either, because I have no idea how to make a dance video. But
okay.
The kids, they get these like micro dose of, so let's just talk about the positives that can come out of that social media. And then there's people talking about like, here's a girl who's had a filter put on, let's say the Kardashians, like they're full of filters, they're wearing Spanx and have like photographers that are editing and doing all these things. And I think there is a lot of education around that now. So they sort of know in the back of their head, like, okay, this isn't real, what I'm seeing here. Because you can also go to someone's feed, see them online, and then go to school and see them and recognize like, okay, this, there's a disconnect here. So I think they kind of get that on some level. But of course, there's always going to be people that desire certain things, certain, physical traits that, maybe don't come natural to them. And then I think it always comes back to, okay, this is who I am. I was born with these strengths. How can I use these strengths to, play a sport or do dance or hang out with my friends? And so it's being able to balance that. I think everybody, man, woman, sometimes looks in the mirror and it's like, ooh, like what's going on?
I don't, but
hit the gym,
right. Sure.
It's time to start running again. But which is, I think, a good thing, because it's like, oh, wait, let me get a little healthier. And then you just have to watch out for if it becomes a rumination or an obsession with food, diet, lifestyle. So it's one of those things that you can have. I would say many people have disordered eating. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have an eating disorder. And it's something that you definitely want to look out for. But what I've been seeing, and just in my clients thus far, there's, I think, more self-acceptance around different body types And there's something like, and now, like when I was younger, it was like the skinny was like really like the thing. Now it's like, no, like now you have curves, and the Kardashians, like thanks to them. And
Yeah, right. Thanks for that.
so
Yeah.
it's different, different ways of being. But I would
It's
say like I love them. Like I love teenagers. I think they're amazing, and I love their brains and their innovation and their rebelliousness. And so we really try to focus on strengths.
Yeah, that's great. There's an irony, I think, in that these platforms that are created to, in some ways, just spread that message of look at this, look at this, look at this, look at me, have that the other side of that, as you were describing, is that there's more knowledge that it's not real. And so there's a lot of questioning that then goes into that, which of course not only applies to TikTok or Instagram or what have you, but whatever magazine or TV show and just all forms of media, you start to look at that and be like, well, wait a minute, how much makeup do they have, or what's the lighting that they're using there? And
well, it's the life lesson that there are always going to be people that are better than you.
Yeah.
And there are always going to be people that are not as good as you. And so not worrying about where you are and just being able to say, this is who I am today. Because whether you're comparing yourself to a magazine or TikTok or, the friend on the street, there's always going to be different people in different places and different parts of their journey. So it's really that acknowledging the mental chatter is there and being able to pull back from it and watch it and say, oh, okay, there goes, you could even call it your worry parks. I think that's part of it, that it is, oh, I'm feeling good because this person didn't do as well as me, or now I'm feeling bad because this person looks cute in their skirt. It's just, okay, this is just a feeling. I don't have to do anything about it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I so appreciate you sharing all of this stuff with everybody today. I'm hopeful that it helps a lot of people. Is there
Yes, me
anything
too.
else that you would want to say to parents or professionals who might be listening and wondering just where to start, or what do I do from here?
Sure. There's always hope. If someone is not making progress, there's always something else you can try. That is, I think, the biggest thing is that never give up. Like I've had clients that I've seen that, I went through all of my tools and it just wasn't working. And so being able to say, if you're a professional, that you can bow out, you can say, I need to refer you to someone else that can help me. And if you're a parent, it's okay to fire your therapist. It's okay to say, you're not helping me, you're not helping my child, and I'm not getting what I need. You don't feel guilty about moving on to someone else that can actually give you what it is that you need. And I would say doing that intuitively, just sort of knowing, okay, I need a different, because sometimes you can only almost like get up to where your clinician is at. So if they've only done work in this one area, you can only get up to that level. And so maybe you need someone that's done another level or a different type of training or has a different certification that can give you the right knowledge, because it is out there. You just have to find the right person, the right fit that you connect with or your child connects with. I think that's the most important aspect of therapy, is that relationship.
Yeah, 100% agree. I tell people that all the time. If you feel like it's not working, it's just that question of fit. Sometimes it clicks with people and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, again, I really appreciate you coming on. I think you have a great way of connecting with your clients, and that you have managed, just as you were saying, a lot of this stuff yourself. It's clear that you've put in the work, and that puts you in a place of not only kind of empathetically understanding what's going on with them, but here are some tools, here are some things that I used. And so that's really valuable. And I appreciate you sharing that with everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
All right, that was Jennifer Brosnick. Her website is jenniferbrosnick.com. I'll put all of that info in the show notes. She does have 4 books out that are all available on Amazon and wherever books are sold. Well, that's it for today. If you enjoy the show, don't forget, please leave us a review. We are up on iTunes now. That does help us out a lot. Also, check out the website if you are interested in individual coaching with me, which is now available up there. A lot of people have been asking about that. I also want to say how much I have really enjoyed being in touch with so many people on social media, on the Instagram page, and also through email on the website. It's just been wonderful to hear the feedback for the show, and I really, really enjoy hearing from you. So if you have something to say, you want to let me know, you want to hear about on the show, or just general feedback, please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, take care. Be in touch. Be well.
This podcast is not intended as medical or psychological treatment. In no way should it replace treatment from a mental health professional.